Hi, this is Raj from Sportscars. This is just a very quick video to wish you a happy Christmas and New Year. I hope you've had a great festive period this year. It's been a very, first of all, frozen, then snowy, then wet winter in the United Kingdom here over Christmas. For that reason, I wanted to do this very quick video to talk about some quite practical tips, I think, about trickle chargers, which I use on most of the cars here in the premises pretty much all the time. When you've got cars sitting for 2-3 weeks without being used, they get run at least once a month, if not twice a month. But when they're not in use, these cars will drain their batteries, 997s and 991s, as well as the Caymans and Boxsters, over about a period of a month, even with a very healthy battery. So we use trickle chargers just to keep the batteries in good health. Most trickle chargers will go through a cycle, so they will fully charge, then they will slightly discharge a battery and then recharge it again to sort of give it a boost. So the basic premises of a trickle charger is to condition that. It's also known as a battery conditioner in some places where you buy them. They're designed to not only keep the battery charged but also sort of keep it healthy, so keep the capacity high, so that they can crank up these big engine cars. This has a 3.8, this has a 3.8. Some of the smallest engine ones here are 3.4. They need a big battery to crank the starter motor to get the engine fired up and also power up all the electronics in the cars. So one of the most basic ones I've got here is a banner one. You can see it's 6 or 12 volt and it's a 2 amp. So that means it will take longer than one with a higher current rating to get a battery fully charged. That doesn't mean it can't condition it in the same way. It's still a very good battery conditioner. But then the other ones that I have most of is these Noco Genius ones, the G3500, which is a 3.5 amp. So this will take about half the time to get a battery fully charged. I've just turned these two on, so they're basically working through their cycle of getting the battery up to 100%. This one's yellow, it will go green when it's done. This one will go up to the 100% one there. There are different modes for the more advanced trickle chargers like this one. So you'd press this button. If you've got a 991 or a 981 which has start-stop, it will more than typically have a cold/AGM. It's actually an AGM battery, which is active glass matrix battery. If you've got a 997 or a 987 Gen 2, then it will normally have just the normal 12 volts. So you'd put it on that mode. So on a 991, you'd put it on that mode to make sure it's properly conditioning the type of battery you've got. And you've got some other ones there as well. You've got the smaller batteries, and then you've even got the lithium there. Now, one thing these more advanced trickle chargers have is a repair mode. So even on this one here, this is a Noco 5. I've got a couple of these. So this is a 5 amp, so this will be even quicker to get it up to charge, and then be able to condition it. And this has 3 settings: normal, AGM and lithium, and 6 volt as well. So if you've got a bike, these also work on a bike as well. There is a repair mode, so 12 volt repair. Now I've actually used that with great success on a battery that was basically sluggish to start a car, but could get fully charged. And basically it lost some of its capacity through, I think it's called it's where the plates in the battery, the metal plates, they get deposits on them, which causes it to be less effective at storing power, storing current that you need to then access quickly to start a car. So I'm not going to go into the science of that, and I'm not going to try and bamboozle you with the ins and outs of how that works. But basically, over time, a battery may, I think it's also called calcify, so it will basically have deposits which lay down on the plates. It could potentially lose some water as well in the wet battery systems that we use typically on these cars, and that causes it to basically be weaker at starting a car, to the point where it could actually struggle to turn over one of these cars even when fully charged. Now with the repair mode, It's advised you actually disconnect it from the car, and that's what you have to do with these cars, because if you put it in repair mode, it basically will pulse the battery at a much higher voltage. I think it's 18 or 20 volts, to basically shake off, from what I understand, shake off those deposits on the battery plates to then give it back its capacity. It may also lose some water in that process because it will be highly reactive in that state, and that can cause it to need to be topped up as well. So be aware of that. If it's a sealed battery, hopefully it should be okay with that repair system. But basically putting 18 to 20 volts through the car's electronics is not recommended. It even in the owner's manuals for these trickle chargers, it says disconnect the car from the battery if you're going to use that repair mode. So what you do is I actually physically take the battery out, leave it sitting somewhere, put it in repair mode. It will then do its work of basically loosening all those deposits off, and then it will return to back to, once it's finished repairing, it will then automatically switch to normal charging mode. It will then charge the battery up. You can then disconnect it from the trickle charger, fit it back in the car, and hopefully it will be a lot healthier. So you can rescue old batteries with one of these trickle chargers, and these aren't expensive from Halfords and places like that. The Nocco ones I think are around 50, 60 quid. The 5 amp ones are a little bit more money, but still under £100. It could be actually cheaper than buying a new battery, and then you've got a healthy battery that you've repaired, and also a way to keep it healthy with one of these trickle chargers. So that's something to bear in mind with those, is you can actually also resurrect an old battery, or a battery that's a bit tired, with one of these trickle chargers. A couple of really quick notes on how to use them. I typically connect them up to the positive terminal on the battery, and then there is normally an earth terminal that the battery is connected to on the body of the car. So on these cars there's one just about here under the bonnet there. In fact, let me show you that quickly. Right, the car's fallen asleep, so I just need to wake it up by pulling that handle. There we go, popping the bonnet. Let me just open the door so it doesn't lock itself while I'm doing this. Okay, so what it says is to connect the positive terminal to the battery itself, and then the negative terminal, there is actually a little earthing point here, which you can see, which I've hooked it up to there. That's the recommended practice with a battery that's connected directly to a car. And also, just to save your paintwork, put a little cloth or something just on where the wire sits over the wing. That's the best thing to do as well, just to avoid scratches. Even under covers, I've got a little cloth under that one there, just to stop the wire from rubbing on the paintwork. That's another top tip. Also, regularly check these, because sometimes they do error, so they will go to standby mode rather than charging, because they get confused or they're not happy with their charging conditions, so they will go in standby mode. You'll have to reset it. Maybe one of the wires has come loose that's connected to the battery, so you need to check it all, switch it off. So I do recommend regularly checking trickle charge. Don't just leave them for months on end without checking them. It is check them every few days as a minimum. With these cars, I sort of have them on for a while, and then I'll have them off for a couple of days and then switch them back on. So that's another point to note. And I know some people do hibernate their cars over winter, so it's essentially the same conditions that I have, where you're not using the car frequently. So this is quite a good practice to sort of leave the car, even if they're indoors, cover it up, put a trickle charger on it, and then check it regularly, and try and take it out at least sort of once or twice a month anyway. Get it fully up to temperature. Don't just run it in the garage idling, because that can also be quite damaging to the engine. Just basically, you heat it up, it draws in moisture, but it's not hot enough to evaporate that moisture. So when you start it the next time, there may not be a good amount of oil in the engine to sort of stop any unnecessary wear from a cold start with very little oil in the engine. So take it for a run, get everything up to temperature, not just the coolant but the oil in these cars, and then when you park it up, it will be perfectly happy for the next 2 to 3 weeks. So that's my advice about trickle chargers, and briefly about winter storage. As I said, I hope you all had a good festive period, and I hope you all have a great start to 2023. Thank you for watching.